Hi, welcome to Fireside Snack. Let's grab a snack and sit down to chat. We're Abby and Gabby, two recovery coaches eager to share our lived and professional experience in the world of mental health and eating disorders. In our time together, we hope to grab a bite to eat and connect with ourselves and each other. Our hope with this podcast is to inspire you to take care of yourself by building a life you don't want to run away from. As a disclaimer, the information shared in this podcast is based on the personal experiences of Abby and Gabby and is intended for informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for professional advice, diagnosis, or treatment. If you are seeking support or have concerns about your mental health, please consult with a licensed professional. Enjoy your fireside snack.
Hi, and welcome back to Fireside Snack. My name's Abby, and I'm here with my wonderful co-host, Gabby. This is a podcast about all things disordered eating and eating disorders, coming from us. We're recovery coaches with also lived experience. We're excited to share a little bit about our thoughts today, and we have a cool episode. But before we jump into that, it is snack time. It's where we get our name. Gabby, what is for snack today?
I've got water.
Important.
And I'm drinking it now because I guess I have to. But this, I don't think I've ever showed everybody with the stickers on my water bottle. And I'm sure everybody's curious because we get millions of comments about my water container. So I just wanted to show it off. And then I'm having a popcorn. What about you, Abby?
Pop off about your popcorn. I have a bonsai sparkling water and some peanut butter cheese crackers, which is a childhood fave. So we got good snacks. I think we're ready to talk, and we have an episode format we haven't done in a minute. What are we doing today, Gabby?
We are taking everybody's audience questions, some that we didn't get to in our last Q&A session, and then some new ones that we got, and we're going to be answering those today. For those of you who don't know, I think it's just important to highlight where we're at a little bit behind the scenes. So if people are noticing, hey, the episodes are a little bit different or the flow feels rushed, I just want everybody to know that during this time, Abby and I are taking some time off. We have some personal things going on, and so a lot of these episodes are recorded ahead of time. So if you're noticing a pattern or something looks different, that might be why. So just wanted to call it out as we see it because we're all about authenticity here. So we're on a little vacation right now, but we're still coming at you through the screen. Hello. All right, Abby, let's get started with some of these audience questions, shall we? Our first question, or first thing that was sent in to us is, when I've done well in recovery for a period of time, I think I've earned a break back into my eating disorder. So I tell myself that I can use behaviors again, and then things spiral. How do I stop this?
This is such a relatable statement. I struggled so intensely with this, especially because recovery is hard. And so when I recognized that work, a lot of times the only reward that I knew for myself was my eating disorder behaviors. I had to become super intentional about finding alternate ways to reward myself and accept. I think this is, I don't know if I've ever said this on this podcast, but I do say it a lot with my clients, accepting that behavior is positive for myself and recovery will never feel like my eating disorder does. Even if it's serving the same need, if it's reinforcing, caring, self-soothing, it's not going to feel the same as my eating disorder. So for me, I had to not only find good replacement things, but also really work on just accepting that reinforcement is never going to feel the way it did with my eating disorder. And that's okay.
I love that, Abby. I think that is true. I think we've talked about that a lot, even on our episodes where we talk about our previous history with substance use and how life looks a lot different. Simple things don't necessarily have the same chemical rush or chemical endorphins as using these different coping skills and behaviors. I think another thing that this speaks to in our vision for the episode is building a life that you don't want to run away from. And that's what I hear when I hear this first question, is wanting to take a break and going back to your eating disorder. So I would think when I hear this question, my first question that I would ask you is why do you feel like you need to take a break from life? What is going on in your life that is causing you so much chaos or so much internal turmoil that you are like, man, I need to dissociate. I need to get out of my head. I need to use behaviors for a little bit in order to self-soothe. Because I would say first, we got to figure out what the heck's going on. And then two, I would say that similar to Abby's point, figuring out different things to do as opposed to going on a vacation back into your eating disorder. Because as with any addictive behavior or substance, your eating disorder is not something that you can just turn off and on. If it was, it wouldn't be a disorder. And so I think being really intentional with the amount of control that you think you might have over your life and your choices, and knowing that you're walking a very thin line when you're deciding to take hiatuses from recovery.
That's a really good point, too, of just the nature of an eating disorder. It's not safe. As easy as it sounds like it would be, it's never like that. Something that came to me while you were talking, Gabby, is the concept of a window of tolerance. And this is something that came up in a meeting I was in a client with recently. The window of tolerance, if folks who are listening haven't heard it, it's the optimal state of arousal for your nervous system, where you're feeling regulated, calm, centered, able to do what you need to do without too much difficulty. There are two other states of our nervous system. One is hypoarousal, which is below, and that's when we're getting withdrawn, shutting down, depressed, slowing down. And there's hyperarousal, which is high intensity, so like agitation, anxiety, feeling like we say like our nervous system's shot, like that's that hyperarousal zone. And a lot of times in recovery or when we're challenging our eating disorder, we push ourselves into the hyperarousal zone, but it's also important to have space within our window of tolerance. We have to come back to recharge. And if we're constantly pushing without giving ourselves a break, then we want to give a break through our eating disorder, when a lot of that could be that we're just not regulated enough in our window of tolerance to recharge without it. So something that came to me more recently that I thought was applicable here is the concept of window of tolerance. I didn't really go into a lot of depth with it. Encourage folks to look into it and how that might impact when we feel like we need a break, what else that might be signaling.
It goes back to that tried and true saying during eating disorder or any recovery that I've been a part of is it's a marathon, not a sprint. Yeah. That's what it sounds like in this question. You ran too hard and now we got to take a break. And so I would encourage you to look at different ways that your life could incorporate those breaks throughout your day so that you don't have to just take a vacation from inside your brain for a little bit.
Absolutely. So we have another question. I'll read for you, Gabby. Did you ever feel like you were too needy in recovery? And if you did, how did you navigate that?
Ooh, feeling too needy. I mean, yes, absolutely all the time. Feeling like I'm too needy, feeling like I'm a burden, feeling like my needs are too much. To that, I say also we're probably around the wrong people, I will say is one thing. Whenever I've been labeled as too dramatic, too needy, too outgoing, too this, too that, it was typically because I was surrounding myself with people who hadn't reached the deeper levels of themselves and could not take everything that I was offering, which is totally okay. I think there's that side of things, right? There could be the people that you're surrounding yourself with might be making you feel needy. I also think, though, there's a very real component of making sure that you have different people in your life who serve different purposes for you or who offer different support. So something that I always think about is I have a friend who and this is very common in things like safety plannings. So for those of you who don't know what a safety plan is, typically if you admit into an eating disorder program, if you admit into any various recovery-oriented programs, you might have to sign a safety plan. And the intention is to keep yourself safe and then to keep others safe as well with this safety plan. But something that it might ask you on there is like, who is a friend that you could call and distract yourself with? They might not be the person that you get in too deep with it, but they might be able to make you laugh and tell you a funny story. Who is the friend that you can call when you want to talk through something and process things and really get into the nitty gritty of it? And then who is a friend that might be somebody who can refer back coping skills or just hold solid support for you? So I think just remembering that when you're in recovery, you are meant to have a village of people who are supporting you. And I think that can really help with that neediness. What do you think, Abby?
I think that's actually, I didn't even pop into my mind. I went in a completely different direction, but that's so true. And the importance of having that community. I think that's why 12-step programs can be so great, because there's like a wealth of people. Not everyone is interested in that, and that's okay. But I think that point of the communal support, the village, is important. I did experience this. I felt, that's my emphasis word, that I was being too needy. But breaking it down with better reflection and clarity, it was a feeling and not my reality. I had people in my life that were waiting to support me, that wanted for me just to say, like, hey, can I have some help? Yes, I'll be there. But I thought that that meant I was too needy. So I held myself back, because no one even had the opportunity to feel like I was overusing them, because I was like blocked by my own brain. So I think, Gabby, it's a wonderful example of like external and also checking in internally. Is this being reinforced externally of like, hey, I need some extra space? Or is this an internal conversation that you're having with yourself and everyone else has their arms outstretched and is waiting for you to reach out? I like how our approaches were very different with that, but very like comprehensive.
I was thinking, I just got goosebumps talking about it, because I was like, no, Abby's experience, I also felt that way too, of there's all these people who are ready to support you, and at the same time, I don't want the help that they're giving to me. I don't want the particular help that they're offering. I think this also speaks to another thing that can be a very common trap that happens in recovery, is only utilizing your supports when you're in crisis. I think is a very big thing that ends up happening.
Yeah.
And so I think something that can curb the neediness. And I wasn't even going in this direction, Abby, but I was like, man, yeah, that got me thinking, like, yeah, I totally did experience that, because I remember, I mean, when you're a young person, it's very rare to have friends who are like, how are you doing? Checking in with you, because everybody is so absorbed in what's going on with them. But I remember I wouldn't reach out to anybody until it had hit a point of crisis. And then they'd be like, well, have you tried deep breathing? And I'm like, screw you, like, get out of my face. And I remember one of my therapists was like, you are basically reaching out to people once the bomb has already gone off, instead of saying, hey, I noticed maybe I didn't have snack today, and maybe I had a hard day at work, and maybe my partner and I are getting into it. And so instead of clocking all of these individual triggers, I'm just like, I can persevere. I've got this. And then by 8 p.m., I'm like, help! And so I think it's important to make sure that you're checking in with people before things implode on themselves. I don't know if you have experience with that, Abby, but I do.
No, actually, it just like sparked my brain in so many ways. For me, it was almost a form of self-sabotage to do something like that, because then it would reaffirm that outside support wasn't helpful. So if I do use outside support, they'll fail me, but I'm putting it in a position where there was no chance of success.
Yes.
Another aspect that comes to mind is if you struggle with people pleasing, the thought of like reaching out for help might disrupt the image that makes it seem like you can help versus needing help. There's a lot to this question. I don't think I'm
also just like, and the victim mindset that we can put ourselves in, of thinking. And so I am in the same boat, Abby. I think it's an incredible question that breaks down so many different things, because also, what is needy? Oof. We are all inherently needy. We all have needs. So when we're being cast as too needy, is it maybe just that we are breaking other people's boundaries and not taking care of ourselves? Is it that we are self-sabotaging and not asking for help when we could be asking for help? Is it that we keep asking the same person and they're burnt out from supporting us? There's so many ways that this question can be taken. So very exciting.
Good question.
Good question. Okay, number 3. I've been off social media for years, but I still struggle. What helped you the most to accept a new body?
New body. I think it was important for me to break down why it bothered me, which sounds really, really basic. But for me, having the understanding of why things are important has always been helpful. So being in my body changed sizes, I live in a larger body now, and I had to break down why is it that is causing emotional distress. And I learned a lot about biases that I held internally, that even though I think like the question mentions, like I've been off social media for years, why the outside pressure may not be there, but understanding the internal biases that I had to then work on those and become more accepting of myself, to give myself permission to be as I am, even if like my external supports were okay with me, which is, important, good. I was a thing that was holding it up. So what helped me most was really trying to look for biases and understanding that I had internal beliefs that were false. I had created predictions for myself that this actually means I can't do XYZ that weren't true. And giving myself space to dig into that was really helpful. What was your experience like with this, Gabby?
I love that you spoke to biases. And I think that even goes back to our social media episode where we're talking about beauty standards and how those are getting reinforced and how those are also always evolving. It's always a moving target. So I think, too, remembering one, it's okay to grieve the fact that you have a different body and
Yeah.
like being okay with that. Because I think there's this rhetoric of there's a lot of body positivity out there and accepting these new bodies and loving your body and things like that. I think it's also okay, though, to say this is different and things have changed, and
Yeah.
maybe I'm not okay with that, but hopefully one day I will be, and working more towards acceptance as opposed to having to praise my new body or even love it. Just accepting that things are different. It reminds me too of like I think this is such a thing that happens is, for example, I kept a lot of my clothes. So when I
Yeah.
was before I was in recovery versus where I'm at now, I would keep a lot of my clothes and I'd be like, well, I love this outfit just in case one day
Yeah.
I get back to that size. And that is such a problematic cloud to be hovering over my head all of the time of instead of saying, man, I get to go out and buy new dresses and new pants and do this and I get to completely revamp my wardrobe, I am sad that some of my favorite clothes look different and I'm holding on to those. I think what has been helpful to me is get that out of my closet, get all of those things, gather them up, donate them to the nearest thrift store, whatever, and be on my merry way. But two, I think allowing yourself to be okay with the fact that things are different.
Different. I love that, Gabby. And I don't think it's talked enough about the categories of how we feel about our body. So much of it is about body positivity or body love. But there are so many other ways to interact with your body that are okay. Body neutrality. I think of like digging down on like a body functional approach. I'm really glad that my arm like can move up and down. My vocal cords work. I can talk and do this podcast, accepting like a body neutral a body neutral perspective. And then there's body acceptance, where maybe like a little bit of appreciation, some more tolerance comes in the picture. We can start thinking of like physical presence. There's body positivity, where it's like active kindness, I think. And then there's like body love, which is love's a little bit bigger. And none of those, it's not a stage where it's like step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each of them in their own right are okay. I think also if we trap ourselves into thinking that body love or body positivity is the target, it can feel really hard to reach, when sometimes like it's okay to just go through body neutrality. And if it changes, cool. And if not, that's okay. But also not trapping ourselves into thinking that we have to love when we could be neutral, or any of the other stages.
What's coming up for me right now is what you have with your body is a relationship.
Mm.
And when I think about that, right, I've been with my partner for 4.5 years. I've had friendships that go on 2 decades. those friendships and those relationships look different every day. Not every day do I wake up out of bed and I like look at my partner and there's like birds singing and I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, the sun is just hitting him just right and everything is beautiful. That's not how I feel all the time. Sometimes I like wake up and I get out of bed and I'm groggy and we snap at each other because I haven't had my coffee yet and the dog's barking. And so I think it's a similar thing with your body. You're not necessarily going to wake up every day and feel like it's always at the forefront of your brain to be like, wow, body, thank you so much for all you do. But
Yeah.
like some days you really feel that way. And some days you really want to hone in on that gratitude. Some days you sleep wrong and you pull a muscle in your back and you're like, darn it, body, you're so annoying, you know? But it's leaving space for all of it. And not just having to be in one category. So I like what you said, Abby, about it being body neutrality, body positivity, sometimes even body toxicity of talking down to yourself, like body shaming. And we fall along that spectrum all the time. It evolves and changes all the time.
That's a great way to put it, spectrum. And the relationship aspect is important because it is. And I think when we come into recovery, a lot of times we have to rebuild a bridge between the trust of ourselves and body. And that comes because it's a relationship. Something else that's a relationship that ties into our next question is our past eating disorder self. So the next question is, how do you feel now towards your past eating disordered self?
Like I want to give her a hug. Yeah, I think, you know, again, we're talking about bodies and our relationship with our body is changing and ebbing and flowing. I think so does our relationship with ourselves. Depending on where I'm at and depending on what's going on in my life, I can look back on myself with kindness and empathy and feel so much compassion for who I was. And there are some days where I look back at myself and I feel nothing but cringe and just like, girl, we should be dead by now, you know?
Yeah.
Like, we should have died. And so I feel a whole ray of emotion towards her because she felt a whole ray of emotions towards everything too. I mean, I think it's complicated and I don't think there's a lot of words. There's not like a single word that I could use to describe my relationship with my younger self, but if I were to use one, I'd probably say that I'm trying to understand her and why she moved through life the way that she did. What about you, Abby?
This is non-planned, really ironic. I feel understanding towards my past eating disordered self. That is like the word that comes to mind. I did a lot of work. I think we talk about function a lot. And for me, figuring out the function of my eating disorder and why that function was necessary was huge for me breaking out of that pattern. So when I see my past self doing all of the things, just all of the things, I don't feel regretful. Would I do it again? Absolutely not. But I don't feel regretful. I look and I go like, yeah, I get it. Like everything that you're doing, I understand. Do I support? No. There are other ways, but I just feel, I guess, some compassion of like, I understand. I'm not looking, I always really viewed myself negatively during that time. And I would have expected my future self to look back on that time and think horrible things. But I don't. I just look and I get it. I get it. Like you're going through a lot. There's a lot happening here. And this is the best way that you can cope right now. And yeah, I don't know if I've thought about it in those terms before, but it really is just a sense of understanding.
I love what you said about, do I support what they're doing? No. But do I feel compassion for them? Yes. I think that's absolutely how I feel. I understand completely why she was doing what she did. In the moment, did I understand what the heck was going on? Absolutely not. I had no clue of why I was doing anything. Something that I've learned throughout my recovery is that shame or being hard on myself has never once motivated me to be a better person or a more enlightened person or a more evolved person. And so I realized that if I'm holding my 18-year-old self to some impossible standard, for what? For why? I was 18, you know? I feel a lot of compassion for myself. I feel big love for her, but also, girl, could have killed us. But also, too, I think it's important to note that we would not be where we are today if we had not experienced the things that we experienced.
Absolutely.
And so I think it allowed me to access empathy. It allowed me to have the career that I have there's a lot of beautiful gifts that came from really dark periods of time in my life. So
yeah. And I think it's really a testament to us being able to speak about this right now, like a little kudos for us, but to be able to offer that towards ourselves says a lot about where we've come and recovery, because it's a lot of discovery and a lot of things that could have gone multiple ways. And so to be able to pause and look back and view the way we do view things is, I think, pretty cool.
it's a big piece of gratitude. There are so many people who have walked in similar paths to us and who did not have supports or people in their lives who they could look up to or lean on or count on, and they're in a lot different position than we are right now. Is one good, is one bad? No. But are we very grateful for our experiences, the things we've learned, the people we've met along the way? Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I think this question would be a good one for you, Abby. I don't know if I can speak to it as much as you can, but I think you would be a great resource for this. So, what helped you transition off of a meal plan to more intuitive eating?
Ooh, this was really hard for me. Used a meal plan for as long as my dietitian felt like it was supportive. But once I transitioned to intuitive eating, I was really scared. Wow, what like a themed thing. Trust. I didn't trust myself. I didn't trust my body. I didn't know if I could trust my body cues to tell me what I needed and how. So a lot of the work that I did with my dietitian was really centered around building trust with myself and intentionally inviting freedom into my life, not just going, I'll just try whatever, expanding what I thought that I could do, what I could tolerate, reclaiming foods that my eating disorder had cut off. And through that, I got in touch with, I would say, like a more childlike perspective on eating. Like a baby is how my dietitian described it. She's like, when you're first coming off your meal plan, it's like you cry. It's like the baby cries, you give it food. Every like couple hours, we're giving it food, and embracing the balance of mechanical eating and hunger fullness cues and intuitive eating. That's a soapbox I can get on forever, because a lot of people understand intuitive eating as a free-for-all. And intuitive eating is really a beautiful balance of hunger fullness cues, like body cues, and mechanical eating and supporting ourselves like we know our need. So learning how to balance those two, coming from mechanical eating on my meal plan, embracing hunger fullness cues, but not exclusively using them. It was a time like tested relationship, but it's been very worthwhile.
Abby coming in clutch with the lived experience. I love it so much. And what I'm gathering from it, because we all know that I have never been on a meal plan, I've never had formalized treatment, and so I've never really had to do this transition. But based on your experience and based on what I've heard from many of my clients and seen, I think the biggest thing that boils down to is slowing down. I think when you first get into recovery, you're just going through the motions. Everything feels really fast. All your behaviors are ripped out from under you, and now you're forced to do all of this. And what am I supposed to do? And you're just kind of going through it. I think when you get into more intuitive eating, you're very mindful. It's before your meals, it's after your meals. How did this food impact me? How do I feel while I'm eating it? How do I feel after I'm eating it? What sounds good to my body right now? And just really slowing down and listening to yourself, I think, is going to be the biggest thing that comes with intuitive eating.
And I like something that I've done with clients, I did when I first started practicing intuitive eating and still do today. When I have a snack, so when I'm deciding what to bring for our episodes, I go sweet or savory, crunchy or chewy. And from those answers, I start to narrow down my options. But it gets me in touch of not what's right there for me to grab. I would have thought I wanted something sweet today for like my food. But I realized, actually, I want to chew. Intuitively, I'm wanting to chew. That means I'm going to want something like a little bit with like more of a bite, and savory sounds good. So I chose peanut butter crackers. But it's a simple practice. It might be fun to try out, but just to ask like sweet or savory, chewy or crunchy. And there's a lot of like spectrum to that, but it just immediately reminds me that like my body can tell me what I want and need.
That's so wonderful because I think what can trip a lot of people up in intuitive eating is that analysis paralysis of, well, I count all the world's my oyster. What do I do? What are the things that I can eat? I like the idea of asking yourself questions. I mean, it's truly going back to the previous couple of questions of just like, it's really building that relationship with yourself and learning more about yourself to know what you want, what you like, what you don't like. And that's the exciting part of recovery is relearning who you are and what your values are outside of your disorder. So, good questions today, Abby.
I know it was satisfying to talk through. I hope all of y'all listening learned a couple things. We love doing these Q&As and we'll do them every so often. Please send your questions, any things that you might want us to answer or talk about. We have our email, firesidesnack@gmail.com. We have our Instagram. You can comment on YouTube. We want to hear from you. We like answering these questions and hopefully you learn a thing or two listening.
That's a goal. That's a goal. That's all we can hope. We so appreciate you listening, and we'll catch you next week. Bye.
Bring a snack.
Fireside Snack is hosted by Abby Dinges and Gabby Buckner. Editing, music, and artwork by Gabby Buckner. Please email us at firesidesnack@gmail.com with your recovery questions and be on the lookout for weekly episodes. Thank you for joining us for Fireside Snack and for filling our cups up with gratitude. Enjoy your week.